Hey, thanks for joining for another real-time edit. I got another Least Tern here. I know the last few of these we've spent a lot of time in the Least Tern colony, but I photographed them a lot this past season, and the opportunities there for creative compositions and really unique lighting have been uh, just incredible. And here's a perfect example. You can really see I actually have this bird photographed with the sun rising up behind it, and normally, even at 500 millimeter, the sun would not be this large in the frame, but when I throw it so far out of focus, it actually kind of enlarged back there. So it almost just completely fills the frame, and I know it's kind of a dominant object back there, but I think it really is offset well with the bird down here. So let's take a look at the settings here. And 250th of a second at f4. The reason I was such a slow shutter speed is for two reasons. I was trying to keep my ISO as low as possible because I really needed the dynamic range to be able to post-process this image. So I exposed it for the sun back there, which thankfully had just risen. It was just on the horizon, so it wasn't real powerful. So even in the single exposure, this is straight out of camera right now, you can actually still see some pretty good detail on this side of the bird. Now the bird's too dark, and in my opinion the sun's too light, so I'm going to even those out. But shooting this at ISO 250 allows me to have a ton of dynamic range and ability to kind of really push this file around. You can see if I go really light with it, plenty of detail on the bird there. Let me zoom in on this and let's give it a sec to actually render. You can see this image looks completely clean. There's barely any noise in it right now, and I just kicked it up a stop and a half. And then of course I can go the other way and really bring the detail back in the sun there. So shooting that low ISO really helps me out with that. I shot at f4 because that's the aperture I almost always shoot at. I really wanted the shallow depth of field look to really kind of give some dimension to this and make the bird stand out. And based on those two things, keeping the ISO down and the aperture wide open already, 250th of a second was the exposure I needed to expose for the sun. So I didn't so much expose for the bird because that would have blew out the sun. It would have been a little too light, and I think I have some lighter exposures here. Yeah, here we go. So here's one where you can see same settings, but I slowed down to 1/25th of a second. And if I tried to bring that back, I got lucky, right? It did come back, so that's pretty good. But the sun is already looking like a little bit funky. The yellow tone in there is starting to lose some of its impact. It's not quite as vibrant. It's getting a little kind of washed out. Whereas the darker exposure here, if I go dark, you can see how rich and yellow that sun is. So let me actually darken both of these so I can show you. So you can see the funky transition to this lighter area here in this originally lighter exposure. Now let me swap to this one. Look how rich those tones are, right? Plenty of detail, and that's because in the original exposure here, I didn't overexpose the sun at all in this one, whereas this one, the lighter exposure, I definitely overexposed it. And this is still even maybe just a touch light on the bird, so I would have maybe had to go even lighter to get a proper exposure on the bird. Would have lost everything back there. And then the flip side is I think I did some, let's see, I probably did some that are a little bit too dark. Yeah, here we go. This one's too dark on the bird. I didn't need to go that far. So in any case, I'm going to use this one, which is a pretty good tone, and overall exposure to get where I want in the end. The only thing is I clipped the wing there just a little bit, but I'm actually going to kind of just clone the edge of that out so it doesn't look clipped in Photoshop. So first step, let's actually adjust this image for the bird. So let's white balance it. Using the white balance tool, we got a nice clean tone on the bird there, and then we'll actually brighten it up and kick the highlights up, the lights up in the curve there a little bit, maybe a little more on the exposure, and then we will kind of lighten our shadows and then bring the blacks back. This might be a little bit too light overall to maintain tone in the sun back there, but I think somewhere in this neighborhood should be a good starting point. Now we're going to grab the graduated filter there and let's darken that sun back down so we can actually see it again, and we'll just pull our highlights back. That should do it. Now the key is we don't want to go too far here. I mean, the sky and the sun should not be darker than our foreground and the bird. That would be a little bit odd. So maybe something just like that, and then let's throw another one on the upper portion and kind of fade it in a little more. And it's going to be too much now, so we'll back off those settings a little bit. But there, really good tone in the sky now. Let's darken this foreground piece just a little bit so our eye really goes to the bird. That should be a pretty good starting point. And let's go into Photoshop now. Okay, first things first, clone layer. Let's clean up something. I don't know what this is. Maybe it was something in the background. going up into the sky. I don't know. There's something kind of weird there going into the sun. So let's just kind of soften that out. I mean, it's so out of focus, but it's making a weird kind of impression on the sun there. And we should be able to just kind of smooth that out a little bit. And I think that's pretty good. Let me back out and just kind of move around, make sure everything looks pretty clean there. Yeah, I think that kind of cleaned that up. And let's fix this wing clip. That was my mistake. And I'm going to go too far with it, and then I'll bring some of it back. And we'll just throw a layer mask on it, something like that. And we'll just kind of bring back the edge of that, but we'll end it in the frame there so it doesn't look like I made a mistake, which I did. Happens all the time. It's kind of hard to see exactly these edges when you're staring right into the sun shining in the frame, or in the lens, I should say. All right, burn curves layer over here. I just want to darken the foreground even more, and I think that's pretty good. Maybe I'm going to just darken in front of the bird here, some of these real light shells, something like that. I'm going to go back to the retouch layer and just get rid of this kind of dark spot back here, just kind of soften it a little and even out the tone of that. All right, next thing is let's throw another curves adjustment layer on. I really want to enhance the catch light right now. And then I think, I haven't decided, I might try and pull some of the red out of here and see how it looks, but it may look odd going neutral with it, so I may bring it back. But in any case, back to this catch light here. So I'm going to go straight across, just holding shift on the keyboard so I can go perfectly straight across. So I went too far, so I'll paint that back that way. And then I'm just going to kind of lighten up this upper area there. And let's see how that looks. That's a good start. I think I could probably go a little bit more. And now you can see the red is really getting enhanced in there. Yeah, there we go. This is the more that I wanted. Now this is way too much. I'm going to definitely back it off. So let me back up. And now that I'm back here, I'm just going to use a big soft brush with black and just kind of paint that down to a tone that looks somewhat reasonable. I'm going to change the blending mode on both of these to luminosity, both these layers, so it actually, there we go, it kind of helps to reduce that red effect that was happening there. And actually now I can probably punch this up even a little bit more because it's not so crazy looking from the red. And we want to make sure we keep that clean horizon and don't paint anywhere outside of the eye. And there we go. Now there we go. So much more life in the eye. I really like that. That looks really nice. Let's just go a little bit more magenta with the whole sky and everything back there, the sun and all. So we'll just do a gradient, something like that. Yeah, maybe a little bit too much, so I'll lower the opacity. And like I said, I wanted to maybe try and just reduce the red in the black feathers there. There we go. Just a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and we'll paint that in. And here's what I'm going to actually do. I'm going to get rid of it somewhat in the front of the bird here, but then I'm going to leave the back edge with some of that red tint. That's a little bit too much of the edge. So it kind of has that really nice glow on it, and then maybe I'll bring it all back just a touch. Something like that. And then maybe I'll bring some of that tone, that was too much, some of that tone back in the eye there, because I think it kind of indicates some of the sky kind of highlights. Yeah, there we go. I might have taken a little bit too much off, so let's bring some of that glow back in back there. Very nice. Very cool. I like that. Boy, looking at this, not much else to do. Maybe let's give the whole thing a shot of contrast. I like that everywhere, but well, actually, I like it only on the bird, so I'm just going to get rid of that effect everywhere and then paint it back in just kind of on the bird in that area there. So there's that shot of contrast. So overall, beginning to end, very nice. I like that. Cool. I'm happy with it. Let's save it. Okay, back to Lightroom. Let me go to the original raw file. Let's reset that entirely so we can see our before and after. So here is our complete before in Lightroom. There's our after. So not a crazy change, but a pretty significant change there. Pretty decent edit, and another image I'm really happy with. Something a little different, shooting directly into the sun. One of the ways I really like to shoot and try and get a little more creative. Hopefully you like this, and hopefully you learned some. Hope you come back for the next one.